بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
This is the Raising Mums podcast. My name is Gemma Elizabeth, and in this new season of the show, I'll be interviewing Muslim women who are striving to raise the name of Allah and serve the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in their own unique ways, using their God-given talents, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. When it comes to your children's education, I am pretty sure you've thought a lot about this, about the academics, about the sports, maybe as also about the religious aspect of their upbringing. But what is often overlooked is giving our children the space and the time they need to reflect, to think deeply, to look around them at the world they live in, at the signs that are all around them that are pointing them back to their Creator. In today's episode, Sister Mona walks us through how we can use poetry to facilitate reflection for our children and why that is so important. At the most recent Daybreak Press Awards, her and her team racked up quite a collection of awards, and most recently they picked up the Best Book of Religious Poetry at the American Book Fest 2023. So let's jump straight in. Tell me, how did all of this come about? How did you start writing and publishing books for Muslim children?
So it's really interesting. I didn't actually start out with the intention of writing for anyone, really. It was a few Ramadans ago. I was introduced to the work of Ustada Jinan Yusuf. She's the author of Reflecting on Allah's Names. It's a beautiful book by Buruj Press. But this was several Ramadans ago, she didn't actually have it published. It was just a series of essays on a website. And as I read these essays and the research, the more I read it, I was just so amazed by who Allah was and is, subhanAllah. And, as an adult, there were so many things. I knew names, but I didn't understand the names. I knew his names, I knew his attributes, but I didn't necessarily understand them. And I wanted my children to be able to do that. And they knew about who Allah was and they knew about Jannah. But I wanted them to really, really love Allah. Because to really worship Allah, you really need to, as they go along, they really need to love Him. And so I reached out to Ustada Jinan and I just said, do you mind if I, write some poems for children? And she was more than happy. And so I just started writing. And to be honest, the poems were really never meant to be for anyone other than my own family. And I happened to send one to a friend and she was like, look, you need to get this published. So again, with Ustada Jinan's permission, I reached out to the Naima B. Roberts and I joined one of her writing courses, and it kind of really took off from there, subhanAllah. So it was just one of those things that the intention was really to teach my children about who Allah was, and it ended up being something more, subhanAllah.
SubhanAllah, that's a beautiful story. How, Allah's just opened the doors of tawfiq for you. And in this way, not only now are your words teaching your own children, but they're going to be teaching so many other children all over the world. SubhanAllah, that's so beautiful. So your book of poems is called Connecting with Allah.
Yes.
A gentle book of rhymes on Allah's names and attributes that invites the reader to know and love their Creator. And that's something that you mentioned there, that you it wasn't just that you wanted your children to know Allah, but you said that you really wanted them to love him. And at the back of the book, it says, and I won't read the whole thing out, and forgive me if I don't say it quite right, but it says something beautiful that I just want to read out. It says, read in the warmth of someone's lap, or as a family affair. These gentle rhymes will soothe the heart whilst making you aware. And that just speaks to me so much. You know, there's something that has to be said for learning about Allah in a loving environment of the home, particularly from the mother. You know, the mother is so pivotal in a child's development.
Yes.
She is without a doubt the person who the child loves the most, at least at first, in those early years, has the most influence on the child. So her words are so powerful and they go straight into the heart of the child. So if you think about it, you are teaching your child about the one who loves them the most, and they're hearing the words from the one they love the most. It's just such a powerful concept of bringing your child onto your lap and teaching them, or bringing them, bringing the family together and reading together and learning about Allah in a group, in that loving environment, which is really, it's what home education is all about. But, we're not just talking about learning about Allah. We're talking specifically about poetry that you've created. So was there a specific reason why you chose that form? Why did you choose to convey these beautiful meanings and lessons through rhyme rather than conventional prose?
That's actually a really good question. And I think one of the biggest reasons was I found children, all of us really, and when I was looking, so when I wrote it, I think my daughter was, I think she was about 4 or 5. And I remember her, she was so quick to learn anything that rhymed, or a song, or, like poems, or you could teach them anything with like a rhyme or a tune at that age, and they would pick it up. And to be honest, it's the same with me. I mean, my party trick is that, I can still recite Abu Ben Adam by Leigh Hunt from off the top of my head. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things that we remember. And I didn't want children to just know. I wanted them to actually remember Allah's names. I wanted it to be, like sometimes I'm not comparing it to a song per se, but like these, even like the wheels on the bus, you hear it and then it's like it's in your head. And I wanted them to remember who Allah was. And I wanted it to be something, that it really came to them. And it's really interesting that you mentioned about this mother's love and reading it as a family, because subhanAllah, I promise you that was my hope for the book. My hope for the book was always that it would be read and enjoyed as a family. Mothers, fathers, families, siblings discussing and really just enjoying learning about Allah together. And for me, that was really important because, like you said, the mother specifically, and parents as well, the children love them the most. And I have this firm belief that when children are young, their parents are actually kind of like their God figure when they're quite young. And how they are with their parents is how they later think of Allah. One of the things that I wanted was this warm, fuzzy feeling that, we get when we sit together as a family. I wanted children to have that and to associate it with the memory of learning Allah's names. That's why poetry, that's why I wanted it to, to be done in a way that families could read it together and enjoy it together.
It's something that we've spoken about before on this podcast, is that idea that when you engage the heart of the child, that's when true learning really happens. Otherwise, it's all just superficial. It's all just information and it's soon forgotten. But when you engage the heart in the way that you're talking about here, that's when true learning happens. And I love this idea you said about, how rhymes, you never forget rhymes. And it's the same for me, like it's the jingles from adverts that I just cannot get them out of my head. And I won't sing any for you now because otherwise you'll be singing them all day. But it's the same idea that if you're reading these rhymes to your children about Allah, then inshallah those rhymes will penetrate like deep into the child. It'll become a part of them. And then when they're my age, inshallah, they'll still have that. They'll still be carrying those beautiful words around with them.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. So if it's not too much to ask, would you mind sharing one or two of your poems today? It would be just wonderful if you could read one or two out for us. Was that too much to ask?
No. Of course, I would be really happy to. I would personally, just giving everything that's happening in the world at the moment in Palestine, one of the questions, so I teach in a madrasa, and one of the questions that children often ask is, why is Allah letting this happen? And we've had a lot of conversations about that. And one of the names, two of the names that I wanted to recite a poem on, Al-Muqaddim and Al-Mu'akhir, the one who brings forward and the one who delays. So I'll recite it first and then Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Al-Muqaddim brings things forward, Al-Mu'akhir he delays. Some things are brought forth quickly, while some things are kept away. He does this in his wisdom. Be content with what's decreed. Trust in Allah's timing, for He knows what you need. See, let me not love to speed up what has been deferred. Let me not wish to delay that which has occurred. And I think for me, that poem, especially for us, when sometimes we don't understand why things are happening, we want answers now, we want things solved now. And knowing these names of Allah, and I think that's the beauty of Allah's names, knowing them brings comfort that Allah has a plan and He will do things when it's the right time. The other one, if it's okay for me to read out another one, is Al-Hakam, the ultimate judge. Al-Hakam is the ultimate judge, both in this world and the next. What happens to you is His decree, so trust Him and don't get vexed. Not a single soul will be wronged. Al-Hakam treats people with justice. Know that you'll be judged by Him, so treat others with mercy and justness. Whenever you perform good deeds, He will multiply the reward. For one bad action or mistake, a single sin will He record. So follow what has been revealed, be steadfast till His judgment. Al-Hakam is the best of judges. His wisdom is abundant. Knowing who Allah is, I think gives me a lot of comfort in good times and bad, knowing His different names. And so that's why I wanted to share the poems now, to give people's hearts comfort, just so that they know that, and we know this in our minds. But yeah, just so that we remind ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has a plan, He brings things forward for a reason, He delays things for a reason, and ultimately He is the best of judges.
Jazakallah khair for that. It's very poignant in terms of what's going on today. So Jazakallah khair, thank you for that. In the book, after each of the poems, I really appreciate the fact that you give these prompts that encourage people to reflect on the poem itself and on the meanings of the poem. And we know from the Quran, we know that Allah has created signs. In fact, the whole of creation is a sign for us to reflect on and to learn from. And every opportunity, every breath we take is an opportunity to learn. And I love that by giving your children this opportunity to reflect after the poem, we are sort of teaching them to establish this habit of reflection in their lives, and to reflect on Allah. And I don't think this is something that kids get much of an opportunity to do in today's world. It's always moving from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, activity to activity. We have a bit more scope for that when you're home educating. But I just love that you've given children that opportunity to reflect and you've given that a priority. What was the hope that you had in including these reflection exercises in the book?
I think you really hit the nail on the head. We move in such a fast-paced world. We often don't take time to reflect on the things that we're learning, to reflect on the things that we're experiencing. And even myself as an adult, I've noticed, I'll be reading these books, and if I don't put the information into action, it becomes very easy for me to actually just forget what I've read or to put it in the back of my head, and it only comes out, like a while later, or, and going back to this whole concept of what we were talking about earlier, sitting together as families and learning and reflecting together, I wanted children and their families to act on what they were learning. And I think there is a beauty in things done in community. We live in a world where things are often done on a very individual basis, like each one does it on their own. But when we do it in community, that's where the magic happens. When we do it in a group setting, somebody might say something that sparks off an idea in somebody else's head. Your son might say something, his brother might say something, and everybody then starts thinking, it's almost like it builds something, it adds on, and it becomes then something that, families can hopefully add to their everyday and all of that. So it really is a starting point for me more than anything else. It was a starting point for families to have discussions. It wasn't like, this is it, this is the reflection question. I wanted people to actually use this as kind of a springboard, if you will, to further discuss how they were going to incorporate this name of Allah in their lives, how they were going to actually live it, so to speak.
SubhanAllah. And isn't that what it's all about? Well, that's why we learn to implement it, to live it, to be it. I really love that. And the idea of having conversations as a group and learning as a group. And we all do have something that we bring to the table that's different, especially our children.
Yes.
So I think that's really valuable. And something I was just listening to in the car, just before this interview, I was listening to a lecture by Sheikh Yahya Rodas, and he was emphasizing the fact that, as parents or educators, we focus a lot on getting our children to read. We get to read books, to read the Quran, mashallah, but we need to help them to learn how to read the signs. The signs are all around them, and reflecting on the names of Allah, applying that in their lives through these poems is a fantastic way to do that. So in line with reflection and also self-awareness, you've also published a beautiful gratitude journal. Walk me through how that came about and your intentions behind that.
First of all, that thing that Sheikh Yahya said, that's amazing, because it's true. There really are signs everywhere, everywhere if we just look for it. And I think that was kind of part of the gratitude journal. The biggest part. Gratitude is the key to contentment. I wanted to build a gratitude habit for myself. Everywhere I looked, I was looking at journals and all of this, and a lot of the journals, and they're beautiful, they're stunning, they're beautifully made, they're well done. But then I also knew myself, which is I have good days, bad days, and days in between. And a lot of the journals had the same activity every day. So they either had the same activities every day, or it had prompts for every day of the week or every day of the year. And knowing myself and looking at the fast-paced world we live in, I know that every day is not going to be a day where people want to sit down and write. Maybe one day they're just struggling to find anything to be grateful for. We've all had those days, where sometimes things just feel very dark, and it's just, I don't know, like, what is, oh, I'm breathing, alhamdulillah. And then I was like, yeah, sometimes people don't even have that. which is why, for instance, one of the activities is like, there's just like a list of things, a list of words, and people can just highlight what's making them happy that day, you know? But really, I wanted something, it was more about building the habit. So for me, I thought about myself, I thought about the fast-paced world we live in, I spoke to friends, and I wanted to create a journal which would take our different life circumstances, moods, you know, all of that into account, while still helping us to build this habit. And, you know, like you said, going back to what Sheikh Yahya said, you know, it's all around. The good is all around. And, you know, the more you see good, the more you're grateful, the more you see good. And, you know, that verse in Surah Ibrahim, if you are grateful, I will increase you. We've actually put that in the book as well. You know, the more I've noticed that I'm grateful, the more I see things to be grateful for. It's actually been something that's been very popular amongst young girls, the book. But to get myself, you know, children, everything just involved in what's something for me to be grateful about today. And it's a journal for good days, the bad days, and all the days in between. That's how we saw it, myself and my illustrator, the Lettered Inkling, who illustrated both books and is amazing. Allahumma barik.
It is a really beautiful book, and it's a very relaxed book. I'm encouraging everyone to go and go and take a look at it, inshallah, on your Instagram page, and I'll put links in the show notes where you can find it. But it's a beautiful book, but you can use it however you want. It's not particularly structured, so I think it would work well for children or for adults.
Yeah.
And you've quoted another ayah from the Quran, from Surah Al-Baqarah. It may be that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you like a thing which is bad for you. Allah knows, but you do not know. So
yes.
I just love that. And I love that it's brought these two sort of very secular gratitude journals that we find. You've brought Islam into this one, because of course gratitude is a part of our religion, a big part of our religion. So I love that. It's a really beautiful book. So if people do want to find out more about your books, maybe see some photos, maybe buy them, where can they do that online?
So basically, we have our website, which is zacandaslam.com, and they can go there. We also have several stockists, both in the UK and abroad, also which can be found on our website. So we have like a stockist page, and people can go and see where it's sold, both in the UK and abroad.
We will put links for that in the show notes to this episode. Thank you so much, Sister Mona, for coming onto the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Sister Java.
Wasn't that great? I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Sister Mona. If you want to connect with her online, her website, as was mentioned, is zacandaslam.com, and they are also on Instagram, and those links will be in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening from, and share this episode with your friends in your WhatsApp groups. Share this episode out with your friends. I'll be back next month with another interview, inshallah. So until then, Assalamu alaikum. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.